Seventh chapter of the book of Isaiah of Yeshayah begins, Vayhi bimei Ahaz ben Yotam ben Uziyahu melech Yehuda. So this is in the reign of Ahaz, whose father was Yotam, and whose grandfather was Uziyahu. And we saw that Yeshayah's prophecy started during the reign of Uziyahu. So this is 2 kings later. It was not clear as if it was the year Uziyahu died or the year that Uziyahu got sarat and had to go into isolation. But either way, he's already at this point a polished prophet. And what happens? Allah ritzin melech Aram upekach ben Rimalyahu melech Yisrael Yerushalayim lemilchama aleha v'lo yachol lehilachem aleha. So you may remember the story that we had in Sefer Melachim, that the king of Aram gets together in a coalition with the king of Israel, the northern kingdom, and they want to attack Israel. They want to attack Yehuda, I should say. Yisrael, the northern kingdom, wants to attack the southern kingdom, and they probably bring the Arameans together with them. But they were not able to attack it. Vayugad leveit David lemor, nacha Aram el al Ephraim, vayana levavo levav amo kinoa atzei ya'ar ibnei ruach. It was told to the house of David that Aram had allied itself with Ephraim, what we were just told in the last verse, and the people are scared, they're terrified. They're like, like trees, especially think of very strong trees. Think of trees that are easily pushed down. That's what they are. That's what they're like. They believe that they are going to be destroyed by this big coalition of the Arameans and the northern tribes. Vayomer Adonai Yeshayahu. Say na lekrat Achaz ata v'shar yashuv binecha el k'tzei talat habrecha el yonah el mesilat stei choves. So God says to Yeshai, go with your son Shar Yashuv. Now that name, Shar Yashuv, means that there will be a remnant that remains. Some of the prophecies Yeshayah gave in the past were talking about how much of Bnei Israel will be killed in this sort of like Armageddon sort of, destruction. But there will be remnants that remain. That's the name of his son. El K'tzei Talat HaBrechel Yonel Mesilat Stei Choves. Go to the upper pool. That's where you're supposed to go to meet them. We talked about back in the Book of Kings about the pool of water, and let's say Chizkiyahu, who went and managed to get the water, created a way to divert the water. So we're here at one of the places of water. There's some who say that this was where they would wash their clothing, because that's what choves means in Hebrew. V'amarta elav, in verse 4, and say to the king, Hishamer v'ashkeit al tira levchal yerach mishnei znavot ha'udim ha'ashenim ha'ela b'choriaf ritzin v'aram uven rimalyahu, and say, be firm, be calm, don't worry. Don't be scared of these 2 smoking stubs, Rezin and his Arameans, and the son of Rimalyahu, who doesn't even say the name Pekach. Don't be scared of their alliance. Yan kiatza lecha Aram ra'a Ephraim uven Rimalyahu lemor, because we know that the Arameans with the Ephraim, with the tribe of Ephraim, which means all the northern kingdoms. It doesn't just mean the tribe of Ephraim; it means the 10 tribes. They plotted against you as follows: Na'aleh b'Yehuda v'nikatzenu v'nakal aleinu v'namlich melech b'tocha eit ben Tavel. What do the Arameans and the northern kingdom want to do? They want to attack you, and they want to place a person loyal to them as king of Israel. We don't know who he is, but somebody who is the son of Tavel. And this is what now Yeshayah continues. Ko amar Adonai Elohim, lo takum v'lo tiyeh. And Yeshayah says to them, it shall not succeed, it shall not stand, it shall not come to pass. And those are words, by the way, that were mentioned by, I think, who used this? George Bush and others have used this. They may know it's from this verse or not, but they've used this when they talked about the attack, 9/11 attacks. And I think Margaret Thatcher said something like this after the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. Whether they knew they were quoting this verse or not, I don't know. And why don't you have to worry about? Kirosh Aram Damasek, Varosh Damasek Ritzinu, V'od Shishim V'chamesh Shana Yichat Ephraim Me'am. Who's the head of the city of Aram is Damascus, and the chief of Damascus is Rezin. And in 65 years, Ephraim won't be around anymore. Varosh Ephraim Shomron, Varosh Shomron Ben Rayahu, Imlo Taminu Kilote Amenu. right? This, we know the capital city of Ephraim is Samaria, it's the Shomron, and the head of the head of their tribe is the son of Rimayahu, right? This reminds me of let's say we talked about this when Shaul wouldn't refer to David as David, when you refer to him as Ben Yishai, he couldn't say his name. We had that also all the way back with Sarah when she was talking about the son of the maidservant, who we call Yishmael. God does not even want to say the name Pekach ben Rimayahu. And so, right, in 65 years, they're going to be destroyed. And if you don't believe it, yeah, right, you cannot be trusted, right? God's saying to believe me, support me. Vayosef Adonai daber al Chaz lemor, and God continues. And so Yeshayah says to Ahaz, ask for a sign. God will give you a sign that will show you that this is true. Vayomer Ahaz lo eshel v'lo anaseh Adonai. But Ahaz replies, I will not ask, I will not test God. Now, generally, we would think that this sounds like he's a righteous man, that he believes it. In the Torah, we're told not to test God. We don't have to ask God for signs. When Moshe asks for signs from God, and when Yeshayah earlier in this book, says things that he doesn't trust the people, it's seen as a bad thing. But the way it's understood here is not that Ahaz is a righteous king, which he wasn't, but rather he doesn't believe God. He doesn't trust God. He doesn't think that God is going to provide this for him. And God's saying, God is communicating to him, I'll do something exceptional that you know that this is not going to come to pass. They're not going to attack you. And Ahaz is not interested. Lo eshal v'lo anaseh. I'm not interested. I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to test God. Vayomer Shimuna Beit David. We're in verse 13. Hama'at mikem halot anashim ki talu gam et Elohai. So Yeshayah says back to him, listen, house of David, right? Remember who you came from. You're from the dynasty of David. Is it not enough for you to treat the agents as helpless, that you also treat my God as helpless? Lachein yitein Adonai hu lachem o tinei ha'alma harav yoledet bein v'karat shemo Immanuel. So here's going to be the sign. There's a young woman who is with a child, and she's going to give birth to a son. For those who understand that this is the wife of Yeshayah he's talking about, and the child is going to be named Immanuel. Right? God is with us. That is what this child is going to be named, as a symbol that God is with you. You may not even think that God is with you, but God is with you, and God is going to protect you from the Arameans, from the northern kingdom. You may know this verse, and you've probably seen there's many synagogue Emmanuel, congregation Emmanuel, temple Emmanuel, but there are many, of course, Christian things with Emmanuel, and this is understood by Christianity based upon presumably a mistranslation of the word alma, which means a young woman. It's not a bitula, a virgin, but I believe in the King James Bible and others it was translated as a virgin, and therefore they see this as a prediction of the birth of Jesus from the Virgin Mother. This is one of the early places. There are other places in Yeshayah, Isaiah they look at a lot, because Yeshayah has a lot of these prophecies of hope for the future. So it's coming from this verse. If you would Google Isaiah 7:14, you will see lots and lots of I haven't looked it up, but I'm sure you'll see lots and lots of references to the birth of Jesus from the Virgin Mother. Continuing in verse 15, by the time he learns to reject bad and choose good, people will be feeding on curds and honey, meaning in a short period of time, things are going to be fine. You're all worried, you're scared. People are going to be sitting there having a nice picnic breakfast or whatever it is. They're not going to be worried. Why? Because by that time, the ground of those two kings who you dread shall be abandoned. They won't be here anymore. You don't have to worry about them. God will cause to come upon you and your people and your ancestral house such days as had not been. Ephraim will be turned away by the king of Assyria. We talked about this in the past. The king of Israel, the king of Yehuda, asked the king of Assyria to come in. The king of Assyria eventually, because to get rid of Aram and to get rid of the kingdom of Israel, but it also causes much destruction because Ashur is also going to attack Israel as well. Let me pause for 1 second. Just so a big thing that's going on in this chapter, which we have to understand to underline this whole chapter, is one of Yeshayah's major messages to the kings of Yehuda is, you guys don't need alliances. Yehuda is going to turn constantly towards Mitzrayim, or in this case, towards Ashur, to help them, to keep in this instance, keep the northern kingdom away from them, to keep the Arameans away from them, to protect them. And one of the things that Yeshayah, and this is something that many of the prophets say, but Yeshayah certainly more than any of them, is don't rely upon Egypt. Don't rely upon Assyria. Don't rely upon Aram. Don't rely upon Moab, Edom. The only thing you can rely upon is God. That's who you're supposed to rely upon. And if you rely upon God, all of these enemies will be taken care of. And look back at our history for hundreds of years, wherever we were attacked, we said, sorry, God, for our idolatry. Please help us. And God sent us a savior. Rely upon God is one of the messages, major messages of the prophets. Obviously, it's more complex today. We can't just rely upon God. We also have to have an army, etc., etc. But that's the backdrop of what's going on here. Ahaz doesn't want to reply. I don't want to sign. I don't want to rely upon God. I'll ask the Egyptians. I'll ask the Assyrians. I don't trust that God's going to protect me. And Yeshayah is trying to say to him, trust in God. They will disappear. It will be fine. Continuing verse 18. And that day God will chase away, right, to the flies at the ends of the water channels of Egypt, and to the bees in the land of Assyria. I saw somewhere, I don't remember, where it talked about how the Egyptian army was sort of undisciplined, so they're seen as like flies, as opposed to the Assyrian army, which were bees, which sort of work together in a much better order. But right, what is he saying here? This is what I just mentioned, right? You think the Assyrians, you think the Egyptians are going to come to help you. They're going to be thrown away also. Trust in God. They might help you for a time, but that's not going to work. And they'll come and they'll be by the wadis and the clefts in the rocks and all the watering places, right? They're not going to support you. And that day, God will cut away with a razor beyond the Euphrates, the king of Assyria, the hair of his head, the hair of his legs. He shall clip off as long as well as his beard, right? Someone is shaming him by taking these things away. God is in charge. You want to trust them? You think they're no. So in that day, each person shall have a heifer and 2 animals of the flock, right? You'll be wealthy. Everybody's going to be eating lots of meat. And you'll have so much milk that they'll eat curds, maybe some whey, that everyone is going to be feeding. Things are going to be phenomenal. There's going to be so much excess. Don't worry. And that day, every spot where you could stand 1,000 vines will be worth 1,000 shekels of, which are worth 1,000 shekels of silver. Will be like a wilderness of thorn bush and thistle, right? It's going to be so. Right now, you want some wine, you want some grapes. It's so hard. You're being attacked, and then it's going to be so cheap because everybody's going to have everything. One will have to go there with a bow and arrow, for the country shall be of thorn brushes and thistles. But the thorn bush and thistles will not spread onto the hills, and the cattle will let loose, and the sheep and the goats will tramp about. And so he's saying, everything's going to turn out okay. You just have to trust in God. But here, Ahaz is not ready to trust in God. Ahaz wants to rely on the Egyptians to help him, on the Assyrians to help him. And Yeshayah's message over and over and again is, we don't need the help of those people. What you need to do is to go and to ask God. God will protect you. God will provide for us. And that is the ultimate way for us to remain alive and well as a nation.